Hi everyone, my name is Zsuzsa Kovács and I work at Prezi as a senior UX researcher for about 3 years now. And I'm also actually a UX or a meetup organizer. I'm one of the organizers of the UX Budapest meetup. And what I would like to talk to you today is design thinking, which is a really popular methodology that is used all around the world. And actually there is now a really big interest in this, so I thought I would share it with you, especially because it's not just a UX related, or it's a methodology used in UX and design, but it's now going broader, and it can be used in product development as well, and basically for any kind of problem solving. So I would rather say, and I always start my presentation with, this is the worst naming ever, because everybody, when you read design thinking, you think that it means how designers think. And you're right by the fact that it comes from that world. And design thinking basically collected a lot of methods that designers use and used, and not just graphic designers, but maybe also architects. But these methods can be used to solve any kind of problem. So that's why it might be interesting also for people working in any kind of IT or product development. But it's actually also used for some social projects, for sustainability projects all around the world. So anytime you have a problem, you can even use it in your private life. These methods can help you solve problems in a creative way. And so since this is not a really complex thing, I can tell you the basics in 20 minutes, and I can show you some links where you can learn more, and I can even introduce you some of the methods, not in a way that you don't need to read anything else and you can just head home and start using them, but you know the names and you can find some more details on that. But it's really simple. And I will also explain it. One of the basic ideas is that design thinking involves everyone in the concept phase, not just designers should work on concepts and ideas. So that's why these methods should be so easy and so simple that you don't need a training, and that's always true. So you can explain them in 10 minutes and then you can start right ahead and do something really practical. So that's why I usually also refer to design thinking as a method collection. So it's not something academic, that you need to learn a lot to be able to start using it, but it's a collection of practical methods that helps you basically to get from one step to the next one. And if you combine these methods wisely, then you can get, you have a problem you want to solve, and at the end you will have a really creative solution that you tested, you check that it's really working. That's why it's really powerful. Okay, so I would like to start also with some principles, and this is all the theory part and the phases after that. So there are 6 principles if you want to do a design thinking project or you want to use this. And the first one is the one I just mentioned. It's the radical collaboration. So it means that if you have a design thinking project, then in the concept phase and during the time of the product, everybody should be involved. Everybody who takes place in the product development. So it's not just the PM and the UXer and the designer who thinks about how different things can be solved, and not just these people are the ones who talk with users, but it should be everyone: the developers, the translator, the copywriter, the QA person. Everybody who takes part in the development should be there when the ideas, when there is a brainstorming session or when these ideas are collected or the details are found out. And why is that? Because if you have a more diverse team when you are thinking in how a problem could be solved, you will get more diverse solutions. So that's one of the basics of design thinking. The second really important idea is the empathize, and this is kind of a made-up word, but it means that you should bring empathy to the team and especially to the developers, who are usually really far away from the end users in usual development processes. So if you involve these people in the research, in the discovery, then they will empathize much more with the users. They will be more motivated when solving their problems because they know who are those people who have this problem. They've seen their pain. They've heard it on the interviews. And I worked in a design thinking project back then at SAP. And there was like a huge difference in motivation of developers and everybody in the project involved when they were really involved in the very beginning. And so that's why you will see that empathize is also the first phase of the process. So this is how we start. We go out, we talk with users, we observe them to see, how the problem we are trying to solve really how it changes their life, or what is the pain in their life. The third one is a really interesting nature of design thinking, that because of its process and because in the beginning there is a brainstorming part, there is a part when actually you will go broad with the ideas, and suddenly you will have hundreds, even hundreds of ideas. So really huge pool of great things, great possible solutions for your problem. And that's a little bit crazy and a little bit scary in this middle part. Because, like if you have hundreds of problems, or hundreds of ideas, that you will not be able to solve or implement all of them. But then there are ways to choose from these and be able to try out something. But why it's really good, because if you once implement the first 2 steps or the first 3 steps of design thinking, which I will solve, then you will have so many ideas that it will, it can basically be so it can be enough for later development processes as well, because once you gather a lot of cool ideas. The fourth one is really important, and it's something coming also from Agile, that design thinking wants you to fail early, and it also empowers you to fail. So you shouldn't be afraid of failing, of projects or prototyping not being successful, because if you do it right, then you always learn from your failures. And so design thinking is also pushing prototyping really heavily, and prototypes are built for trying them out, to test them with users. So you realize really early if something is not working, not once you already implemented it and you spent a lot of resources on something. So that's not the right time when you should learn that it was actually not a good idea. The fifth mindset is show, don't tell. And it's also really important that if you go around the design thinking project team, you will immediately know that's a design thinking team, because they have stuff on the walls, and those are not like movie posters, but they are all the visual outcomes of the methods that design thinking provides. So you should see on the walls there personas, the journey maps, most of the methods has a visual outcome, and it is because if you put it on the wall, then you don't need to explain a lot of things to other team members, but they will be able to see it. And this is the way how you, again, share information, share the learnings that you got from users. So, and why it's more powerful, again. So other than telling a developer, because maybe they couldn't join a UX or the user session the previous day, so other than telling it in words, what I've learned from that user, if I make an empathy map of that, for example, which is a visual way of telling what you've learned on a user story or on a user session, if you put it on the wall, and it's much more powerful. You can go to that anytime, you can refer to that, and usually visual things are more memorable. So that's also really important. And the sixth one is really easy, and it refers to the phases. And then I show you the phases, and you know all the basics of design thinking. But this one tells you that the only thing you should know to be able to use the right method is to know where you are in the process. And once you follow the process and you use the right method according to where you are, you will be okay. So and I find it really important, because what I see really often that, for example, there are companies who are building personas, but they forgot to talk to anyone before that. So they do it to do the check, but they forgot to do their homework and actually go out and talk to those people and gather all the information from which you should build your personas. So it's something that you cannot do without doing something that is a prerequisite. So these were the 6 principles. And then let's see what is this process I was mentioning already several times. So there are 5 phases in design thinking. The first one is empathize. So this is the point which I already mentioned, which is going out, talking to users, doing interviews, observing people during their work or during their everyday activities. And this is important because this is the way we can learn about what are really their problems, their needs, which features would be valuable for them. So this is how it all starts. The second is the define phase. This is the point when we have all this knowledge, and again, this is that point of the process where usually people are like, okay, now I know a lot of things, how to go on, how to continue, how will I know which are the features I can implement now. So in the define phase, there are a lot of useful methods which helps you to summarize, usually in a visual way, what you learned from these users. Once you did that, and it helped you to put things at the right place and you see the big picture, then can come the ideation phase, which is usually a brainstorming, again, involving everyone in the project team. Then you have a lot of cool ideas, which I mentioned. So this is the point when you have so many ideas, you don't even know with which one to start. But then you need to choose one and build a prototype on it so you can test it with users or possible users. And this is the point when you can really evaluate if this idea is the good one. And what is missing from this picture, that it's basically an infinite like circle. Maybe you test it and it turns out that your idea is good, but it needs still a little tweaking. It's always like that. There's no idea and no prototype which is perfect from the very beginning. So then you need to go back, tweak your prototype, solve some problems, go back and test it again. This is some kind of an iteration most of you are probably already doing. But it can also happen that you test an idea and it turns out not to be a good idea. Maybe it doesn't work, users don't understand. So then you need to go back to ideate and pick another idea, build another prototype and test it again. It might also happen that you run out of ideas, but if you did it right, then most probably you have so many that it will really, like you can pick and choose from them for a long time. But it might happen that you need to go back and do another ideation session. So it's an infinite loop. And once you've finished a feature, again, you don't finish, but if you go to another area or another product, you start all over. You again do research, you define stuff, you ideate, you prototype, you test. So that's why I said that it's an infinite loop. And I wanted to show you a few methods just to mention them so you know what are these tools that help you in this. So in the empathize phase, it's not a big surprise, and you will also see that design thinking didn't introduce completely mind-blowing new methods. It's basically just collected a lot of useful stuff, and it's so that you can pick from them. So of course it says, if you want to learn from users or about users, go and interview them. I know you cannot read the little fonts, but it's there, so I will share the Prezi and you can check it, but in 20 minutes I cannot go into the details with all of that. So of course the best way to empathize with people is to do interviews with them. The best is to do interviews with possible end users. They might not be your current users, but they should be people from the target audience, maybe the market you want to get into. A really interesting idea, though, in design thinking is that you shouldn't just interview with the mainstream, but you should also try to interview people from the extremes. And that helps you to bring completely new kind of ideas. And an example for that, so with Prezi, an extreme user could be a presentation designer, a Prezi designer who is building maybe 10 Prezis a week. This is super extreme. Most of our users don't build 10 presentations a week. But these people would know all first of all, they reach the limits of Prezi. They know how many images they can insert before it all breaks. They know all these edge cases. They have workarounds. And if they share these with you, they might give you ideas that we can implement for the mainstream. And also if we talk to people who would never use Prezi, and that's another extreme, we can learn why they are refusing to go to this tool. What are the things missing? Why it's really hard, maybe change from PowerPoint going to Prezi. So if we introduce these extremes, they will help us to gather information and feature ideas for the mainstream. And this is the so-called empathy map that I also mentioned. It's a visual way of telling what we learned on an interview from a user. And it's basically like it has 4 areas. And the 4 areas you should put there, what the user said. Like it can be quotes, what the user said, so like word by word. It also has a section for what the user thought, maybe about, in my case, about presentations, about sales, about the whole, how presenting feels like, or what feels like it's more the third quadrant. This is the feel. So what kind of feelings they have. Here can come the pain points, what they love, they hate. When really they also say feelings, it's a really important area because things that, also like when people talk about feelings on an interview, that's an area that is really, really important for them. And then there's a do section where you can gather again things that they usually do, their habits, how, in my case again, how they build presentations, what do they do when they present it. So this is a visual way of showing it, or summarizing an interview or many interviews. The define phase, I think that's the most exciting one. Here I chose 4 things. Oh yeah, and I will go into one detail. So the design principles it's a really simple thing. Basically it says that the whole project team should sit down in the very beginning and define those basic principles they don't want to forget, and they always want to keep it in mind. Why it's important? Because once you sign off on those principles, it can help you to make decisions later. So when there are 2 features and we can make a decision which direction to go, we can go back and check our principles and see which direction supports more the principles we all agreed on. So it can become really handy later. Personas, most probably hopefully you have personas or you heard of them. Personas are a nice way to collect the patterns that came up when you did the interviews. When you talk to a lot of people from a target audience, it doesn't mean you can make 5 personas of the whole world. This is usually one like skeptical point of that. But for example, if I talk to salespeople, I most probably will be able to build 1, 2, or 3 main personas who would behave the same way with my product. So this is, once you do a lot of interviews, you can search for patterns and build these basically half imaginary people, but they are mainly, you know, like the essence of what I learned from people, and they can help me focus on directions and again make better decisions. Storyboards can be a fun way as well. This is more about, if you build a storyboard, usually we build storyboards on one user story, it helps me to think about the details. What would happen with the user, you know, how that problem affects their life, how my solution can help them. It's basically a cartoon that explains this user story. It's also a really fun thing, especially to do it with a team. It helps them to empathize with the users and their problems. And this is the one I picked to go a little bit into the detail, and this is the journey map. And you have there 2 Prezi related journey maps, but it's a bit small, so you won't see the really important part, but still it looks like an example. And it's also really important that a journey map doesn't always have to look the same. There are like infinite visualizations of a journey map. So what is a journey map? Journey map represents a journey of my user. I can build several journeys for one product, or I can build an imaginary journey where I want to arrive, or I can build a journey based on what I learned from my users. You can build a journey of any process that you want to visualize. And on my example, I have 2, one creating a Prezi and presenting a Prezi. And I wanted to tell you the story of that because this really shows what is the power of this method. So when I joined the mobile team at Prezi a few months ago, or almost a year ago actually, they were in a small kind of crisis. They were really focusing on one feature idea, and there was a strategic decision not to go that direction. But they were focusing on that for so long that they were kind of stuck. That, you know, they only knew what they will not do, but they didn't know what they could do instead. So I said, okay, why don't we do a journey map? We know a lot about our users. I invited researchers, and we sit into a room, and we basically started to think through, okay, so what is the journey when our users create a presentation? Maybe not even with Prezi. So the colors actually represent the yellow things are stuff that happens always outside. We're not even supporting that. The blue color represents things that you can do in a Prezi today. And the red dots are pain points. So we started to go, you know, like, what are the steps of creating a Prezi? So it starts with, okay, first, you know, a request comes that you need to build a Prezi. Then you start to do your research. You collect material. Then you maybe do a first draft on a whiteboard. Then you open the Prezi the first time, and you start to draft out your presentation, and it goes on. And during these discussions, while we build this journey, we came to a lot of really amazing mobile ideas, feature ideas that we could basically implement. The pain points helped us, and the missing parts that are not in Prezi. And since, you know, mobile is a really cool tool and it's always with you, so we started to focus on things what you usually don't do in front of your computer. So which are those scenarios when your mobile can be really useful. And we came to a lot of really good ideas. So we are still using this, actually the ideas that came up during this journey mapping session and the brainstorming after that, and we are still working on those features. So it was really helpful for the PM and for the whole team who participated on that. And what is also really important to know that the journey mapping exercise's biggest strength is not the visual. So that's not the most important part. The really important part is the discussion that happens while we form this journey map. And that's why I always say that the visualization is not that important. It's nice because we also have it on the wall, so we can go there anytime and check. But the really important thing was, you know, during those 3-4 hours when we were discussing what are really the steps that our users need to go through. And so then in the ideate phase, usually it's brainstorming, but also brainstorming is oftentimes did wrongly. So a good brainstorming session is not something we sometimes see in movies, that someone is, you know, standing in front of a whiteboard and people are shouting in ideas. That's not a brainstorming. Research showed that this way you will gather much less ideas than people individually. So a good brainstorming session always has individual and common parts, and they are like repeating. So first there is an individual round of everybody thinking on their own, putting on post-its their ideas. Then we share, everybody shares their ideas, explain to the team, and there then can be another individual round and another sharing round. So it's really important to mix them. And in this Prezi you will also find a few special brainstorming techniques that can spice it up a little bit, because brainstorming can be a little boring after a while, or after lunch, or in the morning, or late in the evening. People are not so motivated. We are always thinking inside that box, even though we can say that think outside the box, but it won't help. So there are some really cool techniques that can really open up those creative creative parts of your mind to really be able to go outside and find some creative stuff. Prototyping is really easy. So you pick an idea and then you build a prototype. In IT, it's usually a clickable mock-up or a clickable prototype that we can show a user and ask them to perform some actions with it. But what is really important is that not just in IT we build prototypes, but also if you make a product, it's a really good idea, especially if it's like a camera, as you can see there, or maybe you don't see there because it's really small. But even of a camera, you should build a small, maybe paper prototype to see how does it feel to hold it. So there is this old story that when the first Palm computers were made, then one of the designers he ordered a wooden piece which was the same size and the same weight as the Palm computer would be at the end, and he was carrying it around for a week, to see how it feels, if it really fits in his pocket, all of his pockets, and how does it feel to just hold it and have it in his hand. So it's also really important in case of products to have this kind of feeling, and you can also ask users what do they think about that, but you need to build something that you can show them. And so, of course, we build the prototypes to test it, as I said. So yeah, this is nothing new. Show it to users and do a proper usability test. Don't just show them and ask them what do they think about it. And then there are also ways to, oh sorry, that was a clicker stuff. So there are also ways to capture these feedback, that feedback that you got from users, or maybe from your own colleagues on ideas, and there's the feedback capture grid. It's kind of similar to the empathy map that I showed, but here the 4 things, and when you show an idea to your colleagues, there are also ways to do that. We also have a design critique at Prezi that we are doing every time, but you can also ask your colleagues, if you want to get their feedback, to always give you all these 4. First is what they like about the idea, so positive thing, then how they would improve, so how to make it better. If they have questions and ideas that builds on top of your idea. And that also helps even the feedback round to be more, basically better. So these were the basics that I wanted to share with you. I also have some links here. The first one leads you to the D-School bootleg. Yeah, that's an important thing I forgot to mention. So how do I know design thinking? I used to work at SAP before Prezi, and SAP's official design methodology is design thinking at the moment, and I was at the company when they were actually introducing that to the whole company. And how SAP connects to design thinking is because this school, it has 2 schools, one in Stanford and one in Potsdam, and it's the Hasso-Plattner's Institute who is doing the D-School, and Hasso-Plattner is one of the founders of SAP, so that's why SAP has a really strong connection to this methodology. And so the D-School has a really cool and free bootleg. It's a PDF document you can download. In the beginning, it explains, again, these basics, of course, more in detail than I could do it now. And you will also find one-pagers of methods, not just the ones I mentioned, but also those you will find there, but a lot more methods. So you can just read it and try it out yourself. I also link there the SAP's design thinking site, because they have a little, so design thinking is also a methodology that each company usually have their own translation of. And SAP has, I think, a really good take on it. They also have more methods, so that's why it might be useful also to check their site. And then you can also do a virtual course. I hope it still goes on the D-School site. So these were the links. And do you have any questions?
I don't know how much time you have, but I would be very interested in how in Prezi you are building personas. So what are the methodologies you are using, and how often you do it? You do it by project, or you do it by every half a year? And so, because it's a nice word, and everyone uses personas, but
I have great news for you, because next week on the UX Budapest meetup on Thursday, my colleague Gábor Vai will exactly explain this. So that will be a case study of how Prezi builds personas. So,
okay, perfect. So I wish kind of.
Yeah, so please join us and then you will hear the story. But yeah, that's a good question, because it's not an easy thing. But he will explain it more in detail, and he was the expert of that, so I wouldn't go into details.
So I'm just, we are doing kind of the same, mixing design thinking and design sprints and things like that at Skyscanner. And I'm just interested, do you have a trick how to convince the developer to join this session?
That's awesome, yeah, because, so usually people, so what is the usual question after I present this is, okay, and what do you do from that at Prezi? Everybody wants to know, which is fair. And what I usually say is that we are using design thinking methods, but this is the problematic part, how to convince engineers. And I don't think that's because they wouldn't join or they don't feel like. What I feel is that often they are, like all of us, they are, you know, they have a weekly estimation of tasks, and they don't have those 2-3 hours to join a cool journey mapping exercise, because they are, you know, it's already Wednesday, they are behind their tasks, how would they finish until Friday? So how SAP does it, but that's also only a company of 70,000 employees can do so. The design thinking project I mentioned, it had a 3 months concept phase, and not one line of code was written during those 3 months. But it was only people, you know, like put in one space and do workshops and build personas and do interviews and build journey maps and build design principles and all of this. So of course Skyscanner probably cannot do that, but what we've seen that after those 3 months, in 9 months, the guys did so much more than usually an SAP project would reach in more than a year. So I don't think it's a wasted time. But of course, it's really hard in this case to maybe convince stakeholders that, hey guys, maybe a 1 month concept design thinking stuff would be super useful. I think you can sneak it in and try to invite them all the time. Maybe try to get the Scrum Master, I don't know who is responsible for that, to put it to the estimation, to the weekly estimation, maybe 1 or 2 hours of workshop that they attend if they are okay with their other tasks. And one important thing that I learned from my own mistake is that if you invite them to a brainstorming, then show them what happened with the ideas. Because this is what we did, that I invited them for a brainstorming and we had great ideas. And then we worked on it, but they didn't know what happened with their ideas. And then I invited them again and they were like, okay, I have better things to do. And I completely understand them, because you want to do things so you see the results. So if you also follow that, then I think, you know, if they see their impact, then they will come again.
Yeah, our biggest problem is that they are actually brainstorming with implemented prototypes. And so.
That's also not the best thing, maybe, yeah. Okay. Any more questions? No, I will also be here if you have more questions, but thank you for your attention.